Okay, we're going to move on to the next segment of our agenda. Again, a reminder that this portion will focus on infant loss. And so please do take care of yourselves. And if you have to step out at any moment, that is totally fine. It's really my pleasure and honor to introduce our keynote speaker, Shay Jacobs. She is the founder and executive director of Adam's Purpose, a nonprofit dedicated to providing culturally responsive grief and mental health support for Black families and communities of color experiencing pregnancy, infant, and child loss. After the stillbirth of her son, Adam, Shay transformed her grief into purpose by creating healing spaces that center culture, community, and lived experience. Through peer support, therapy, and community-based programs, her work focuses on improving access to care, strengthening support systems, and advocating for more compassionate and equitable approaches to grief and mental health. I am so thankful that she was willing to share her abundant expertise with us today. So please help me welcome Shay Jacobs.
Okay, wonderful. Well, it's such an honor and privilege to be in the room today. So I just wanted to thank each of you for being here. Whether you are a NICU mama or parent or father, a lost parent, and all you wonderful medical professionals that are here in the room, or just an advocate. I shouldn't say just an advocate. Advocates are great. Sometimes we hold all of those roles, right? I hold all of those roles, except for I'm not a medical professional, but I want to be one day. So anyways, it's just a pleasure to be here with you today. I am going to walk you through a journey. I'm a storyteller. And so I'm going to tell my story in a way that I know it's going to translate to you. And just framing today is going to be my personal story, community voice. I'm also done a lot of work in advocacy. And then we're going to just talk a little bit about what purpose has come and how purpose can develop and how that can be birthed from any situation. Even tragic situations, we can turn our pain into purpose. So just so happy to be here with you. And I got to get adjusted to being technical. Yeah. So one of the things I want to just say is the first thing that I resonate with is I'm a mother. I'm a mommy of 4. I've got 3 amazing boys on this side of the earth, Elijah, Josiah, and Seth. And anybody else in here is an all-boy mama? I got adjusted to the chaos, okay? It's chaotic most of the time, but it's good chaos. It's somebody's wrestling moves or somebody screaming because they can't find their plushie, and it's a lot. But I'm here for it, and I'm always loving the joy that my boys bring me. So being a mother is the role that grounds me. It's the role that motivated me, and it's the role that has pushed me to purpose. So I love being a mom. And after losing my special baby, I call him my angel baby, Adam, it led me into this work of being an advocate and wanting to reach and love on other mamas that went through what I went through, and some have gone through even more. But so this is just not a professional experience for me as the executive director. It's deeply personal. So thank you so much. So we're going to talk about a little bit about Adam's story. I'm going to talk about my experience with, in the medical system. I had some great experiences. I had some not so great experiences. The emphasis on listening to parents. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Black grief, specifically, and cultural humility, from grief to purpose, what families need, and when loss speaks. I might hop around a little bit, but we're going to get there. Like I said, storytelling, navigating a journey, and I'll try to be on time. So give me a 5-minute cue, Susan or Sada, if I get off our time here. So what I experienced didn't just impact me. It led me to ask some deeper questions, and I'll be asking you some questions throughout our presentation as well. So this story begins with my son, who I gently introduced you to, Adam, and the loss journey that I experienced with him. And it's going to end with how we can better support families who experience loss. So I want to invite you on this journey with me. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is when I was expecting Adam. And I was one of those moms. I know I hear a lot of moms, they hate, sometimes the swelling of the legs and, the morning sickness and all the things. But for me, I just loved being pregnant. It was like just a miraculous experience for myself. It was something I dreamed about as a little girl, being a mother. And so when I was expecting Adam, it was just joy bubbling over for me. And I never thought that I would ever experience losing him. So on one doctor's visit, it changed everything. That morning, I woke up, I was feeling great. Went into my routine doctor's appointment, and the nurse told me those fatal words. I don't hear a heartbeat. And I was like, okay, what do you mean there's no heartbeat? So she tried to do it again and do an ultrasound. And those are the words no parent ever wants to hear. And those are common words I hear among mothers that experience stillborn or miscarriage is there's no heartbeat. So hearing those words really led me into desiring some type of miracle. I was just more like, well, find it. I was in disbelief. You don't hear a heartbeat, let's do something else, right? Kind of immediately wanting a different outcome. I left my primary doctor and had to drive myself to the ER. The only good thing about it was right across the street. But I remember in those moments trying to grapple with what is taking place. And when I think about the times of what took place before I even lost Adam, it kind of floods my brain like a panoramic experience that tries to help me make sense of why did this happen or what could have been done differently. I begin to think on times like I went to the doctor before and I tried to explain I was feeling complications, but they told me I was okay. And then at that time, it wasn't my primary doctor, it was a different doctor. So I questioned back, should I have just gone to my primary? Should I have just, done it again? And all these things kind of run through your head. And one of the things that I can recall about when I was told that I no longer could hear Adam's heartbeat was that I was given an option to either go home, gather myself, talk to my kids, or for me and my husband to remain there and just to go on with that process. And I remember we just went ahead with that process to deliver him. But my delivery was so awful. And if you need to leave, I respect that you need to leave, but I'm assuming most of you have seen it all or maybe heard it all. So we already knew we were having a stillborn. But here's an interesting fact. This was my first vaginal pregnancy. My first two kids were C-section. So this is the first time I'm experiencing labor at such a height and my baby is already gone. And during that time, my husband, who was my main advocate, was watching my contractions and he was counting them. He supernaturally became, husband MD. I don't know. I couldn't even figure it out. But he was watching my contractions and he was speaking for me and advocating. And I recall asking and requiring for help. And on this particular night, it just seemed like the staffing was either slim or in my mind, I felt like, well, they just care about the babies that are going to be born alive. Because I just didn't have the proper amount of care to help me understand what was going on with my body, to give me more medicine. I was just in an excruciating amount of pain. I didn't understand what was taking place. And while my husband and I were calling for a nurse and, trying to figure out what the next steps were, I remember just being so uncomfortable. I stood up. And when I stood up, no joke, I'll stay in front of the mic. When I stood up, I looked down and I said, "What is that?" I delivered my baby standing up, with the nurse trying to figure out what was going on and get me the proper care. She was very kind, but that was another devastation. He was in the sack on the floor, and I was confused at what was happening and why. When you're grieving, you cannot process things in real time. When you're in a place of trauma, it's like a fog, and you cannot understand what you might typically be able to understand. I just remember feeling like this must be a dream. So then my husband tried to reconcile the moment and take my attention away from the sack that was on the floor. And when we picked it up, we figured it out. Obviously, it was him. And then he was honored with holding our baby while I tried to get myself together. And for about 8 minutes, he was holding our lifeless son. They did not have a cot in that room for us. And he had to say, "I'm uncomfortable. I know this is my baby, but I want to lay him down. I want to tend to my wife too." And so he had to advocate for both our lifeless child and me at the same time, navigating how does he show up for both of us. And so what parents remember is how you make them feel. And you all know this. How are they cared for in moments like this when their world is falling apart? The one thing I can say navigating through that is the gentle sensitivity that came about when we were offered the care kits and the remembrance baskets. And the major highlight for me was when Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep offered us pictures. And at the time, we were coached. My sister had a loss before us several years before. So my husband called her husband and asked him for advice. And he told him, "Do whatever they allow you to do, like receive all the resources." So when it became our time to navigate, do we want pictures? Do we want this? My husband just said, "Yes, yes, yes." And one of the best decisions was when we met a beautiful young lady named Sasha, and she came in with a gentle spirit, and she helped to navigate us in this place to take pictures with our beloved son, Adam. Also, I had the privilege and the honor of having an most amazing nurse after I lost Adam. Nurse Sarah volunteered her time. There was not even a position that was official where she was in the hospital to help her navigate. And I think she served somewhere between bereavement and being a nurse, but she created this position because this is where her heart was. She did not get paid to do some of the things that she did with me. She was such an advocate, she was such an ally, and she truly was an accomplice. When I got ready to leave the hospital, I turned around. Well, here's what she asked me. She said, "Shay, do you want me to take Adam out of the room, or do you want to leave when you're ready?" And as a lost parent, you're never ready. That's one of the hardest moments too. You got to eventually go, but you don't want to. And I remember telling Sarah this. I said, "Sarah, please take him, because I never want this image and feeling of me walking away from him. I don't want to remember I left staring at him. So if you could remove him for me, that would just give me a little bit more peace." And I recall then talking to Sarah, and I said, I'm going to find a way to do something about this. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do something. And she looked at me and she said, I have total confidence and faith, and I believe in you so much, Shay. And throughout that time, she and I kept in contact. Sarah met me at Starbucks and Einstein Bagel on her off time. Now, you know, for those of you who are professional medical workers, sometimes you work 12-hour shifts back to back to back. Well, y'all know y'all's situation better than I do. But the sacrifice of her meeting me on her days off and hours off was golden. We met 4 or 5 occasions, and she met with me one-on-one just to talk to me, just to be there. She was probably my first mental health provider that I didn't even know that I had. And she continued to allow me to speak my heart and gave me resources. And as a lost mom, it took about 15 times for somebody to tell me something for me to realize, oh, yeah, I need a therapist. I need to call a therapist. From the medical doctors to my my doctor's office, to family and friends, to Nurse Sarah and other people that I was in contact with, it took multiple times for someone to gently say something to me, for me to peek into it like, oh, because you're not processing. And Nurse Sarah was super supportive by meeting with me. One of the things she met with me on is I said, I'm going to do an event for grief and loss. And she said, I will help you plan. What do you need from me? And that's what we met on several times. I'm going to move forward. But her kindness and her authenticity and her showing up sacrificially, I give a lot of credit to her support on helping me move forward in that decision. So I talked about the moments where Sarah was a light to me, and then the moments where care felt lacking was bedside manner was not always there. Not everybody seemed to have that compassionate care like Sarah. And so it just makes a difference what is said and how it is said. She made me feel seen and she made me feel human. I had some other times where I felt pretty invisible, unheard, and there were definitely a lot of resource gaps after we were discharged. I was given a list, and I call it the dead list, because it had every which organization that was on there. But when I started calling those organizations, they didn't exist anymore, or the services they offered were not real. And it was just like, why is it on the parent to get the help? Which really fueled my heart and what we do for Adam's Purpose, that we put it on the agency and on the providers to provide the help and to do the reach outs. But I went through this list and called to get grief support, and about 8 to 10 of those organizations were no longer either in existence or their information was not relevant anymore. And I definitely had difficulty finding support. One time I went out to an event in Arvada, and it was promoted by Channel 9 News, and it was around September, October for Pregnancy and Infant Loss Month. And I just assumed I would walk in and I'd be able to maybe connect with somebody and they would care and we'd be able to get some type of support. But when I walked in, I got a lot of blank stares, almost like, what are you doing here? And it was one of those moments where I felt like there was such not only a resource gap, but it was a cultural gap. I just felt so unseen. I later went back and spoke to the owner or the organizer just to give her some feedback on, like, you're inviting people who've had loss. Got to have a more warming environment. And part of that comes from my background as an event director. So I got this background as event director, and people get to experience you from registration to the time you walk out the door, and everything is integrated for experience. So that was part of my experience, but also part of my background for that. But this was the first reach out me, my husband, and my 2 kids did. And that was such a hard experience for us, not being seen or heard. This is where I was saying that a pregnancy loss event experiencing felt unwelcome. I'm getting ahead of myself, but this is good. I'm right on target. Ahead of myself. I realized that many families struggle to find a safe space. And so that also fueled my heart to like, if we can't find a safe space, I might just have to create it. So, in what ways do we show humility in caring for a grieving family? Many times you don't know what grief and loss is like until you yourself experience grief. I was a part of that crowd. I did not know how to hold space for people who were grieving, how to not say the wrong thing. Sometimes we say too much. We make it about ourselves. We're uncomfortable. Our society is uncomfortable with grief and loss, yet we experience it every day. There's two things that we know for sure in life. If you are born, you will die. And I'm not being insensitive, but our cultural humility and humanity itself, we do not openly talk about grief and loss. And so when we are in positions where we are faced with how do we navigate, whether it's ourselves personally or people around us, it's uncomfortable. In what ways do we show humility in caring for a grieving family? Sometimes it's not just being silent, it's just saying, I'm sorry you're hurting. It's not offering too many words. It's the empathy on your face. It's the care in your tone. It's the warmth in your touch. So this invites us to look at it from a different posture, one that is rooted in humility, not assuming that we know what people need because we all grieve differently, but being willing to listen and to ask and sometimes follow the lead. I've had a girlfriend call me every single day when I lost Adam for a year. Every day she called me and we talked about whatever I wanted to talk about. She didn't pry. She didn't, how are you? Are you sure? We talked about rainbow Skittles. It didn't matter. Whatever it was that we talked about, she let me take the lead. So humility can look like this, slowing down even in an environment that's fast paced. That's what she did for me. It looks like listening to a parent when they say something feels wrong and taking it seriously, not dismissing it. It might look like asking what would feel most meaningful to you right now. You might get silence. You might get nothing, but you might get something. Whatever it is, it's not assuming. It's not assuming we know what somebody else needs. It might look like honoring a baby's life in the way that matters most to that family, not just what seems to be routine or what you've seen before. And sometimes humility simply looks like just being present, not trying to fix what cannot be fixed. I mean, we know this, but it comes up in ways that we have to challenge ourselves to keep recalling ourselves to just being there. So in my experience professionally, I did a lot of advocacy work and it connected me to other moms and in my experience in building up Adam's purpose. I had conversations with many families navigating loss and they're discovered similar patterns and experiences. And parents began to share some things that really start to sound very familiar. Same thing, speaking to medical providers and telling them something feels wrong, but not feeling like they were heard. Feeling invisible and no one explaining what's happening. Here's one thing. I think we spoke at these tables before, and sometimes it is good to know. No, there was a parent that spoke earlier that said, I'm sorry, the parents that spoke earlier and said, I was so grateful for like truth and giving me like facts that it really does ground you sometimes. And sometimes it's very great to be grounded when you have options, if there are options. So giving options versus it being closed off and not parents not having options on what they could do. I remember my nurse saying, you could either do it this way or do that way. Shay, did you want me to leave the baby here or did you want me to take the baby out? Giving options really gives a sense of room for agency, even in difficult times. And giving explanation, even if they don't understand it, sound explanation. The common things we're feeling dismissed, assumptions about family structure. I've had some mamas tell me some hard things. I had a couple of moms tell me in a community listening session that they made assumptions that her husband was a boyfriend, just kind of slight dishonoring, or was told that she should get on birth control. Or she lost her child and the nurse said, well, at least you didn't name your child. I know that's none of you, but these are real bedside concerns that make a grief and loss situation even all the more horrifying when you're thinking about that didn't feel good at all. And not being believed when something felt wrong. For many Black families, these experiences intersect with broader systemic realities. So I'll talk here a little bit about Black grief and cultural humility, that bias and assumptions and historical mistrust in healthcare, cultural difference in grief, and importance of humility and listening. And these things I'm mentioning just to have a backdrop on many times when Black and brown families are entering into the medical systems, they already have experienced so much. So having sensitivity, understanding what we call weathering, what's in the backdrop of what somebody might be experiencing, and removing bias and assumption and assuming we know nothing. And I have to do this with myself. Just because this is my lost journey, I have to assume I know nothing about what this other mama's going through, and she has full agency to tell me what she needs, what she feels, and what she experienced in a way that I only stand in one position. Two positions, humility and honor. She gets to tell me everything. Sometimes I have to be on the other side of this call, listening to a mama tell me how her journey was with our program and what she would have liked differently. And I take those opportunities and I lean in. Because it's not a one size fits all. Grief and loss, health, none of it's a one size fits all. And sometimes there's room for us to grow through those reflections. So we emphasize the importance of cultural humility. That's what we do in our work. And it helps us to kind of like desensitize ourselves from the things we pick up unconsciously. And this invites reflection for all of us. Human, regardless of our profession, regardless of what we do, regardless of how we're supporting people, I have found more ways for me to search out being more humble so that I'm not harmful. And it's just a constant work. I just have to put myself in that position. How does culture shape grief? And I'll ask this openly. If anybody wants to say anything, please be brave. How does culture shape grief? For us all, we all have culture. How does culture shape grief? Anybody? Yes, ma'am.
We demonstrate it in different ways.
That's right. That's right. Grief, yes.
Different like cultural traditions or traditions surrounding the passing.
That's right. Yes, ma'am.
How you watched your family members do it, as the parents process grief is how you then try to do it.
That's right. Yes.
Keep it within yourself and you more on how you shape it, or are you sharing it with your community around you, and that will affect how you process it. So,
Absolutely. Yes. Girl, say something.
all like
Yes.
even providing that education. So
All of you are so on target. I love that you shared that, because grief is universal, but how we experience it and express it, that's personal. It's personal. And culture shapes how families understand loss and how they process it and how they choose to honor. And we're all different. We're all very, very different. And that's why the humility is needed. We have to almost like re-enter into each situation brand new, like we don't know, even though we've seen it 1,000 times. Because the one time we think, okay, this is what I'll do because this person responded very well to that. The next person will say, I don't want to take anything home for my baby. And it'll shock us. Like, well, almost 90% of my parents, they want a memory basket. I ran into a mom that says, I got rid of everything. I don't want any remembrance. That's her business. I'm not to judge. I don't judge that. That's how she chose to deal with her loss. And so that's where the humility comes in. My personal stance doesn't interfere with how I serve and support, right? You guys are awesome. Okay. How am I on time? Let me know. 12 minutes? Perfect. So my baby's loss really inspired me. And I will say this is that within the first 3 months of losing Adam, I started planning. And I said, if I'm experiencing this pain, so are other people. What I did not share is that before we lost Adam, we lost my husband's mother. Then we lost Adam. Then we lost a niece who was 21 years old. So by the time Thanksgiving came around, I didn't care about the pilgrims from the east, west, south, or a turkey, a ham, a sweet potato pie. I didn't care about any of that because we had just buried 3 beautiful loved ones spanning across each generation. We lost a mom in May. We lost Adam, our baby, in September, and we lost Brianna in November. I had never experienced loss so compound. As a young girl in my teens, I lost my grandparents. And like someone said, you kind of grieve the way you were shown and how your family talked about it. We celebrated and then we didn't talk about it. So when it came to me with parenting with our grief, we talked about it. And then somebody mentioned like the stereotypes around grief, men and women grieve differently. My husband lost both of his parents, his dog, our child, our niece, and championed me by working when I couldn't go back to work because I was mentally unable. So here we are. We don't compare, but we honor, we consider, right? We don't compare, but we make consideration. So it led me to desire to support other people navigating grief because I couldn't find the support I needed. So I was like, we got to do something about this. So that is what began Adam's purpose. We lost Adam in September of 2018, where he was born sleeping. And by March of 2019, I had the first event. I thought maybe we'd have 20 or 30 people come because they liked us, close family members. Well, when I released it to the community, 100 people registered. 100 people. I had to move the venue. I had to take it from a library to my friend. She had a church. She was like, you could do it here. And support came from everywhere. And I'm just so grateful standing on the other side, how our programs now are supporting families in so many multiple ways. I couldn't be more thrilled that Adam's purpose is truly real. It's manifested. That pain that I've endured and I still endure at times, I feel honored that I'm his mom and that through him, this work is living on in his honor and his legacy. Adam is amazing. I knew he was born for a great purpose. I had no idea that I'd be raising him like this. So our mission, we provide bereavement and mental health support for Black families grieving the loss of a child. And we envision a world where every Black family has access to compassionate grief and care, and that no one grieves alone. And though we're rooted in Black grief experiences and centered on Black families, we welcome families of color navigating child loss and healing in general. Our work centers both on individual healing and community connection. Much of the work that has developed has been by me connecting with other lost moms. I had one lost mom connect with me shortly after I got out of the hospital. She was a resource. And By the time I did our first event, I was getting calls, emails, and texts, and I was that mama going to Starbucks and Chick-fil-A's and Bogs, meeting up with other women who had experienced child loss. So our work centers on those things. We already know it was founded by the stillbirth of our son. In navigating loss, we encountered stigma, barriers to care, limited access, and our personal journey became a commitment to create pathways for other families. Because healing does take place in community. I have found that to be remarkably true and remarkably effective. Right now, our programs include like well, we say it's 8 weeks, but it's more like 10 because we have an orientation and we have a celebration, but a 10-week peer support group that is facilitated by a therapist and is led by a peer advocate. Our peer advocates are moms who've gone through our program, who come back and they want to invest, or who remain in our organization and they want to be facilitators and or they show up in every which way possible. So those are the care services that really were the impetus to our support. And then we expanded to family healing circles where we support fathers, partners, and youth. And we cover from pregnancy loss to adult loss. In our community, one group, I had 3 generations. I had a younger mom in her 30s. I had her mother-in-law and her grandmother. Each of them lost a son. 3 generations. And we cover to adulthood because in the Black community, there isn't always access to care. So one of my oldest participants was 83. And her son died probably 30, 40 years ago. But that was probably her first access point to some type of care. I love our family healing circles because my kids love them. And they tell me the truth. So they're part of our programming. And when they say, when they wake up, like, are we going to family healing circles today? And I'm like, yes. And they're like, yay. Or when they say, you know, mommy, you didn't take me. I tell them it hasn't happened yet. Or I'm sorry, I had to leave without you. You were sleeping. They call me. Okay. They call me. Because it provides play therapy for them and a lot of just interaction and engagement. And so the whole family could come. So whether it's been the bereaved mom, it could be her mother, her sister, her auntie, her brother, her husband, her cousin, anybody who's considered part of your family unit can participate. Intergenerational healing takes place. And then we have care navigation, case management, coordination, individual therapy, and our community engagement programs. We do a lot of great stuff. I'm gonna move on, be quick. I think I got 3 minutes left. How many minutes? Oh, hey. So just to recap, our direct family support is those peer support groups. We hold our peer support groups in 2 different fashions. We do one called Angel Moms that just covers our pregnancy and infant loss. I found that being I call myself a PIL mom, it deserves a different space. So we don't really integrate our support groups in the same manner. And then we have a Mother's Mourn support group for mommies who've had children of older ages, because there's just different dynamics around the types of losses that we want to hold some preservation to honoring those losses in a way that they feel like they can get something out of it. And then the family healing circles, as I said, ages 4 and up. The 4 and up started because my son was 4. He was 4 at the time. We birthed this program and I needed him to be somewhere. And it ended up working out great. So he comes along. Case management, care coordination, wraparound services, whether that is housing, transportation, sometimes food assistance, and whatever else. We have a case manager that supports with that. And then our community and systems leadership, our peer advocate program is amazing. Our peers that help to facilitate with those support groups are also facilitating at healing circles, and they're showing up in the community in so many ways. Sometimes I watch the news and I see our peers on TV because they're supporting another mom in some way. Some of our stories are very tragic, where their child has been murdered. and they're fighting for justice. And so oftentimes they go to court cases with each other, or they're walking together or rallying with each other. So they've developed their own community, and I love it. We have our Black Grief Collaborative that invites care providers and lived experience in a cohesive environment. And it has been very, very, very awesome to launch our Grieve Gracefully Symposium under that Black Grief Collaborative. We learn together, we live together. We allow our care providers and mental health and medical providers to share with us their knowledge and their experience. And then the community shares their experience and their knowledge, and we kind of love and grow on each other. And we have a great time learning. And our Mothers Mourn Healing and Remembrance Brunch is our annual event where we hold remembrance for our moms to come together and their loved ones to in a healing space where we just kind of honor them and honor them as they honor their children. We do this every year on around Mother's Day, so it's coming up on May 9th. So we lead the community and systems initiatives with that Grieve Gracefully. I was just going to say, I think I forgot to say that. There's so much more I could say about the Black Grief Collaborative. It's an amazing thing. I've got so much more I'll say about that probably at another time, but we've got our staff, our organization. All of this is not even super reflective of our organizational reach. I just met with my my case manager yesterday, and from our beginning to now, we've reached thousands. Do you remember the number, Aaron? I'm putting you on the spot. How many thousand people did we reach from the time we started? That's okay. He's normally good on the spot, but like 1,500, 1,700. Yeah. So from the time we started our organization, we've reached over 1,700 people with direct program support and outreach. Thanks. So as we think about the programs and initiatives that we've focused on, and we've got some data behind our work, let's just move into our final reflection, framing this. I love the Define Conference because it has paired folks like Sarah, the folks like Susan, and the rest of the team, like community organizations with systems work. We need them both. Support services and systems, they go together, right? They're like pepperoni and bread. It's like pizza and it's magic. You can have it. Especially the resources, there's such a limitation to resources all the time. And so we wanted to be one of those organizations that hospitals could share what we do and help other families as they're leaving. And we get a lot of our referrals from hospitals and unfortunately, Department of Medical Examiners as well. So when families say something, are we listening? We should, before, after, and during. Identifying what needs are there, being compassionate, honest communication, being heard and believed, choices and how they honor their babies, time and space to process. And this is for everybody, and continued support beyond the hospital. Healthcare providers are typically the first responders to grief and loss. I had Nurse Sarah, y'all. Be like Sarah. You know, they say like, be like Mike back in the day. No, seriously. I had Nurse Sarah. She made the difference for me. She was part of the foundation that helped me to do this work. She met with me for the planning, and she brought her staff to our first event. She was amazing. I lost touch with Sarah. I think she's in Utah somewhere. But anyways, and our compassion, even in our organization, shapes how we support our families and remember their losses, because all of them are different. And that partnership between healthcare and community matters. And I definitely want to be a bridge to help support our families. So we're just bringing it all together. We're all for the same goal. We're all for the same reason. All of us here want the same thing, for families to get the support that they need and for us to do our very best to love on them. Awareness, advocacy, and systems change for all of us, whether we're with lived experience, whether we're providers, organizations, or partners in some way. This allows us to elevate the real voice and begin to influence how systems respond to loss, because change doesn't happen in isolation, it happens in partnership. You and on your team, you're partners. Many, staff, we're all partners. My team back there, we're partners. We collaborate on how we make things better for our program and our participants. We spend a lot of time on that, improving that. I was just gonna put this plug. Can I put this plug in? I got 1 more minute. Okay. So Grieve Gracefully is our 2-day gathering that creates that space for learning, healing, and connection, bringing families and providers together to deepen understanding of grief through education, storytelling, and culturally responsive care. I said that really fast. I really love this event. Catherine, are you here? Yeah, I'm gonna plug Catherine. So Catherine attended, I think, 2 years ago, and has since then become our community research liaison, where now she is taking statistics from our she's listening to our parents to get an idea on what they've experienced and how we can improve that experience. So that came out of the Grieve Gracefully in the task force, and we're doing our annual gathering on October 16th and 17th. So this is something we definitely want to share because we're bridging the gap between systems and community. And it has just done a wonderful, I can't even tell you it all. But anyways, let me go on. So when loss speaks, we listen, we lean in, and we learn from those we serve. And that's what the Grieve Gracefully and the Black Grief Collaborative is about. We're learning. We just want to learn from those we serve. So, Aisha?
Thank you so much.
I'm here for it.
That was such tremendous knowledge and personal sharing that you were so open and gracious with our group about. So truly, we are so thankful. I think we have a few minutes for questions. Can open it up to the group, and I'm happy to help get us started. How is it that not every birthing facility knows about your organization? What is the process by which or through which we get our systems plugged in to your organization so that when we have families that are grieving, experiencing loss, we can refer them to you? I think before I met you, probably 6 months ago, I had no idea that your organization existed in our state.
Yeah. So thank you for that. And probably because I've been so busy in the organization serving that we haven't had such great opportunity just getting out and spreading the word. We get referred by moms who go through our program. And so one of the ways that we can foster that type of relationship is we have a referral pipeline, and that's a quick, easy email. And we'll have a new system that will help integrate our intake program now, where you could just go on to the website and enter in information. Right now, we do have that referral system with a few hospitals and the Dome, and they just send us their referrals. And then it's on us to reach out. And then that parent is in awareness. Like, do you give permission for Adams to reach out? And we do that part. We want to take that burden off of the parents. So yes, that's an easy fix. We can make that happen today.
There's your stuff, but certainly I'm talking to our group here as well, right? As hospitals, that we need to get up to speed on these tremendous resources that exist in our community, and making sure that our workflows integrate these really robust resources that we can then give to our families in real time. Questions?
Do you have a bilingual speaking?
Not yet, but that's something we want to do. And because we focus on cultural responsive health, culturally responsive care, we are looking to start a Spanish speaking group, but we don't want it to be translated. We want people to be able to speak in their native tongue and not have to get that translated. But we want to be able to offer that to our Hispanic families. And we do have virtual groups as well, and in-person groups. But yes, I'd love to talk to you further about that.
What is your outreach capacity? Like in terms of
geographic?
As far as who we serve,
Yeah, I mean, just like how far north, how south,
so definitely metro, and in this fall, we're looking to expand that we can do some rural. Yeah, this fall or early 2027, so that's on our strategic plan. Yeah, because we realize that like some of our rural families just don't get access to stuff, and so we have virtual virtual capabilities to be able to do that. But then our program is it's easy to implement in place. It just, yeah, we have facilitators or can find them in certain regions, and yeah, the turnkey is what the word I was looking for. I was looking for turnkey. Yes, ma'am.
Someone online asked, how do families pay for your services?
Oh, I forgot to tell you guys. Guess what's great about our services? Right now, they're free 99. Yeah.
And with that, let's transition into our lived experience expert panel. I'll hand it over to Zara again. Another round of applause for Shay. Thank you so much.